Right, let's get into creating our own set of drums and beats. Okay. Now I've taken out the drum loops that we had before. Thought it was sounding a little bit stale, a bit boring, and we couldn't do much to the editing of it in terms of effects, etc. So here's a cool way of adding in our own drums, which we can edit ourselves. Let's go over to the categories section here and click on drums. And we're going to drag and drop a new drum rack into a new area here, which will create a new MIDI track with a drum rack on top of it. And looking down here, let's have a look at the device section. Here we have the drum rack pad. So you can see if we scroll here up and down, you can actually have up to 128 different sounds, samples, effects, and even instruments on any of these pads. And every time that we put something on here, a new sampler instrument is created. Now we're not going to get into sampling just yet. So what we can basically use this for is to build our own drum kit, bit by bit. So let's do that. Let's start with a kick. Now, to save a bit of time, I have a little demo kit with a few items saved already. So let's put a kick drum, and it doesn't matter which one we put this on for now. There we go. And as you can see to the right here, a sampler instrument has automatically been loaded with the kick drum sample inside it, and everything can be manipulated within here. So this looks a bit scary right now, but don't worry, we don't even need to touch that for the drums. Okay, let's drop the other elements in. We need a snare. Click, drag and drop onto a new pad. We've got a closed hi-hat and a conga as well, bit of percussion. Here's a great way to build a beat. What we're going to do is go up to the drum rack here, onto this clip, and if we double click, that creates a new empty MIDI clip. Okay, and you can see here, next to the notes, we have the names of the samples that were dropped on those pads. And as we went through on one of the earlier videos, we can start to populate the notes here with various beats. So let's start with the kick drum. If we put that on the first, second, third and fourth beat. See, we just have a 1 bar loop at the moment. And let's solo the drum rack and hear what that sounds like. Okay, nice standard kick there, 4 on the floor. Let's give these a bit more velocity. I'm going to highlight all the needles below and increase the velocity right up. There we go. That sounds great. Okay, let's get this looping actually, and then we can start to be a bit creative. See what happens. Just double clicking here to enter the notes. Let's bring these up a little. Okay, so that's quite a straightforward little beat we've got going on there. What I want to do is make this twice as long. And to do that, we can go down to here, next underneath the length, click, and we can either press up on the arrow key, or we can click and drag. Alright, so what I'm going to do is click and highlight all of this right up to the end of the first bar, Command and D, and that's duplicated it. Now what I'm going to do is add a little conga flourish at the end here. These velocities up. Alright, not too bad. I mean, it's fairly straightforward. I think it's missing one little sample. I think maybe let's get a shaker. Now, a good way to find a shaker, if we go up to the search bar, let's type it in. And we need to select samples. Alright, shaker 1. If we click on that once, you can see Ableton gives us a nice quick demonstration of the wave. And if you click right on the arrow keys, we can keep hearing it. That sounds quite nice to me. So let's go back to open the device view. Click on that shaker sample and we're going to drop it onto one of our pads. Going back up to the MIDI clip, double click. And now you can see the shaker appears here on top. All right. What I'm going to do is an interesting technique here, is I'm actually going to put this shaker on every single 16th note here. So this is going to make like a chick sound, okay? And when we first hear it, it's going to sound quite boring and quite mechanical. So what we want to do to make that sound a little bit more rhythmic, a little bit more human, is two things actually. The first being, we're going to change the velocity of a few of the notes so that you get a mix of quiet and loud velocities, and it has that realistic element of someone actually holding a shaker with their hand and shaking it. Not every time is going to be the same velocity. So if we click, let's say, every fourth one, I want to be louder. Okay, so I'm going to click on the fourth one and every fourth one after that. So if I hold down Shift and click, you see it's just selecting the ones that we want. Okay, and now with those highlighted, I can go down to the velocity editor, grab those and bring the velocity right up. Just of those highlighted ones. Okay, let's see what that sounds like. Okay, maybe I dragged them up a bit too much. Alright, so the second thing that we can do to make it sound a little bit more human is give it a bit of swing. So if I click on the note next to the sample, that highlights all of them. And then I'm going to show you something down here in the clip view, something called the groove pool. Okay, and this is where a selection of grooves is kept. So if we click on this little hot swap groove, okay, this will open up the section of grooves that we want to try out. Okay, so I say we want something we want it to swing a bit. Now you can see all of these. Oh, we've got the little demonstration of it there. Just pause that. There's a whole variety, and these are all extremes from very subtle to very, very swung sounds. Okay, and we only want quite a subtle sound here, so I'm going to, we've got 16th notes, and let's try 25. It's got a nice swing feel to it, so we double click. And let's hear what that sounds like. Nice, it's got a nice, much more human feel to it now. I'm thinking the shaker still sounds a bit too overpowering, so I'm going to take out some of the notes now. Let's take out the first on each one, because also bearing in mind we have the kick and sometimes the kick and the snare. So we've got three elements sounding at the same time. It can often sound a bit clouded, so let's take out those. I've highlighted them all and then I can just backspace to delete. Alright, let's see what that sounds like. I'm using my ears here and I'm just going with what I think sounds good, and I'm thinking that the closed hi-hat is now being a little bit lost. So once again, we're going to take out even more notes. So let's do them one at a time this time. Just click and delete off. Now, before I do them all, let's just, here's a good tip, is to not completely fully commit. Just do a couple and see what it sounds like. I like it. Okay, that was lucky. So we can keep going now, deleting these. And there we go. So now hopefully our little closed hi-hat will cut through a little bit more. And we still have that nice shaky feel with the velocities being different on the two notes, and also the swung groove that we used as well. Okay, let's hear this in context with the track now. Unsolo. Well, it's definitely a lot more interesting than our original drum sounds. It sounds a bit more punchy and more lively. Only thing is, it sounds a little bit dry considering that we put some nice reverb on the claps and on the keys earlier, didn't we? So what we need to do now is apply that to the drum rack. Now we could, by all means, apply the same reverb by increasing the send level for the whole drum rack. The only downside to that is there might be some elements of the drum kit that you don't actually want to be soaked in reverb. For example, the kick drum. Very rarely want any reverb on that. So what we're going to do is look into how we can have some return channels within the drum rack itself. So double click. Now what we need to do is open up the chain list. And now this shows us the list of samples that we have, their volume, and we can also change their panning. Let's do that a little bit actually while we're here. Let's get the snare slightly off center. Oops, sorry, that's the volume. Good one, Gary. There we go. And also let's get that closed out off center, we're to the right. And the congas we want, let's just go further left. And the shaker. There we go, so we've got a much more spread out stereo feel to that kit now. Now what we need to do is, first of all, see this tiny little button down here, we need to show the return chain. Clicking on that, it's now asking us to drop an audio effect on. Ideally, we want the reverb to be the same really, I suppose, as the one that's on the claps and the keys. And this just makes sure that the sound is more together. What we can do is go over to the original return channel. We can click on the reverb that we used before, Command C to copy. Let's go back to the drum rack, click on the area we're going to drop it in, Command and V, and it's pasted it in here. Fab. Now we need to be able to send a certain amount of each level, and we can do that either here, you can see the sends have shown now, or if we click on the show send button here, we can also do it within the chain list. Alright, just to be different, let's do it up here. Okay. Alright, let's get some reverb on the snare. And now on the hi-hat. I'm feeling that the decay time's a little long actually, so I'm just going to bring it down a little bit. Don't want it to be too cavernous. A bit more room reverb, so a bit smaller there. Okay, let's carry on. Let's get it on the shaker. And really this is just about using your ears and adjusting to taste. There's no right or wrong. Okay, and I like a lot of reverb on those congas there. It just really makes it stand out a little bit. Alright, let's hear that with the track. Bring the overall volume of the drum rack down. So we're kind of mixing as we go here. Okay, let's start to hone the sound of this drum kit even more. Let's get some EQing done first of all. Let's start with our kick drum. Okay, so going over to audio effects, and let's get the EQ8 once again. We're going to drop it in, and we can solo the kick. Now, quite often with kick drums, you can see there's a whole load of sound, a lot of frequencies happening here, but we're going to take out some of the more muddy ones. And maybe let's increase the volume right on the peak kick, the bit where it really bangs hard. And maybe let's accentuate the click of the kick as well, which is usually around about the 2 to 5k mark. There we go. So let's see what that was like before and after. So a bit more focused sound there. That's good. All right, let's bring in the snare now and see what that sounds like. Let's drop an EQ on. I'm going to get rid of some of the lower frequencies here. We don't want it to clash with the kick too much, but we still want the punch of it. And we'll keep the middle frequencies, and let's accentuate the snap, the real crack. There we go. Okay, bringing in the hi-hat now. So just a reminder, I'm to solo each of these one on top of the other. I'm holding down Control or Command and clicking the solo button. Let's drop in another EQ. Now there's some low end rumble on this sample, so we can sweep that right out with the high pass filter. And again, accentuate the highs. Okay, let's bring in the shaker next. In fact, that's the order I made them in. I'm just going to drag, and you see I just clicked and dragged the conga over there. This is just me being a bit anal, but this is the order I built the kit in, so let's get another EQ on. So we're just designing the sounds so that they all complement one another and have their own space in the mix. Okay, finally that conga. This time, because we're more than likely going to make a very, very similar EQ change, I'm going to highlight this EQ that we did for the shaker, Command C to copy, click on the conga track, click in the device area, Command V, paste it in. We went not as extreme for this one, just want some of the body of the conga. There we go. Okay. Great. Let's check the mix of the whole song now. If I click on any of the solo buttons, it'll unsolo everything. Right, there's something I want to show you now to help really get the track pumping. And it's something that I think is extremely common in dance music and is well worth knowing. And it's something called sidechain compression. And it's the way we can get that pumping and ducking sound on the bass line or any other instrument that you want to drop out every time the kick sounds. So that has a very rhythmic pump to it and really helps the kick stick out in the mix. And this is my preferred way of doing it. What I'm going to do, just close up the drum rack for a second. I'm going to do Control or Command, Shift and T to create a brand new MIDI track. And what we're going to do is double click on the clip area there just to create a new blank MIDI track. And on any note, it doesn't matter which, double click to create a note, and we're just going to make that last, let's say, half a beat. Duplicate and put it on where the kick would sound every single time. Okay, coming out of that area, I'm going to rename this track Sidechain. So Command and R, or Sidechain Kick to be precise. And this is going to act as a fake kick, and it's going to control a compressor. So what we do now is mute this, because we don't actually want any sound to come from this. This is just a trigger. We're now going to click on the bass track, drop a compressor on, and you see this arrow here, we want to open that up and enable sidechain. And we want the audio from, oh, it's not showing because I didn't put an instrument on there. My bad. So what we do need to do is put any old instrument, let's put an analog. It needs to have a device on here to come up in this section. Okay, so now if we go back to the bass, compressor, audio from, sidechain kick, there it is. Okay, so we're going to solo the bass and also opening up the drum rack, we're going to solo the kick. And let's hear them play together. Let's make sure that sidechain is playing. So you can see it's playing around these 4 notes that we put in, but we're not going to hear anything because it's muted. This is purely to trigger the compressor. So, audio from the sidechain kick. Let's increase the ratio. I would say about 4 is good. So you can see here, there's some activity coming, and this is purely coming from the sidechain kick. So let's now pull down the threshold. There we go, and now we've got the gain reduction on the bass. Let's increase the volume of the bass a little. And you can play around with all these settings just to get it to your own liking. Let's increase the ratio that bit more. Just going to reduce the gain even more. So let's hear that in context now. So a nice bouncing vibe now. Just tweaking levels as I go here. Let's bring those keys back in. I'm feeling that the keys need more reverb. Let's increase that. Maybe even more delay. Okay, we can even now copy that compressor from the bass, Command and C, and let's plonk it on the keys so that they also get that pumping, ducking effect. Pasting it in there, let's listen. So now they sit in with the track that whole lot more, and don't smother it too much. We just adjust the volume to taste. Let's take a look back at arrangement view now. We're going to zoom out. Okay, and let's get our the drums that we made over here. Because it's just one clip, I'm going to click, press tab to come back. And let's drop it in, let's say from there. I think that's where the drums started before. We click on this triangle here to enable it in arrangement view. And let's open it up, check it's all okay. You can see we've got the MIDI data there. Fantastic. Double clicking on it, we can see loop is enabled. So as we go to the right, we can drag it across. Let's copy that. Let's paste it back here. Alright, and let's just check from the start. Okay, and so that we can check that a sidechain is also going to be okay, let's click on that clip, tab, and let's drag it over here. And what we can do is loop this throughout the entire track. There might be parts of your song where you don't want it to be sidechained, you don't want things to be pumping, you want them to be their normal even self. And for example, if we wanted that, say at the beginning for example, we don't necessarily want a pumping bass line when there's no drums or no kick drum beneath it. So we can highlight the first 2 bars and simply delete them. So when we start from the beginning, the bass won't start pumping until the sidechain kicks off here. Let's give that a quick listen.